Right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to all. Puta, as I told you, we are starting the 12th competency of the syllabus today. The Patangana Puta Doloswini competency. I think I don't want to explain how important this competency to an advanced level student who is following the advanced level in commerce stream. But these days I'm busy with paper marking. I want to tell you something. This year, right? This year we don't have much, right? Good passes, A passes for the subject of accounting. That is what we were speaking in the panel, right? And moreover, let me tell you this, for PLCs, okay, it is very rare where the students have obtained more than 20. It's very rare. Okay. But let me tell you something. One of the most important major reasons I thought I'm thinking and I have recognized this. The students do not know, they don't have gathered, right, the true meaning and understanding of a PLC. Okay. Possible things that can be happen in a PLC. They don't know, they have not recognized it, right? On the other hand, they don't know the correct practices of it. Okay. So let's see how well I can assist you in achieving these things. Puta, I think all of you are ready with the tutorial. Okay. Let me explain the meaning of a PLC first. PLC කියන එකේ තේරුම. හරිද? Right? Give me a minute. Right? Right, Puta. Right. Haripute. Puta, the first thing is, right, a public limited company is incorporated under the Companies Act. Look at this definition, okay? A public limited company or PLC is a company incorporated under the Companies Act. Something important. Something important, right? So I wanted to highlight this part. I mean, highlight karaganda, right? Incorporated under the Companies Act. Okay. Highlight incorporated under the Companies Act. Okay, then whose shares are offered to the general public. This is the first time we are speaking about a PLC in the A-level accounting syllabus. So far, we have discussed about sole proprietorships and partnerships, right? And non-profit organizations, but not regarding a business whose shares can be sold to the general public. Okay, okay. Then these incorporated companies or public limited companies have a limited liability for the shareholders. Limited liability. I think everybody knows it. Then it has, right, it has a separate legal entity. Legal personality. Okay, legal personality. These things are tested in the A level in a very, right, significant and beautiful ways, right? Next week, paper class right? Because I wanted to teach this to you before, right? I have to discuss about it. In this time accounting equation in A levels, they have given the application of the accounting equation to a company. So far we received that for a sole proprietorship. For this time they have given it to a company. But that's a very beautiful question, right? Puta, look at this. In Sri Lanka, PLC are governed mainly by Companies Act number 7 of 2007 and Sri Lanka Financial Reporting Standards. That means SLF, RSS and L cases. Highlight those two as well. Highlight those two as well. Right. Let's move to the characteristics. Pute. One of the key characteristics in a PLC is separate legal liability. Now, this is something very important. Puta, right? So in a legal, right, in a public limited company, the owners are going to be definitely the shareholders. Harida? Owners la venni aniwarryama puta shareholders la. Harida? Ekani kisima katawak naha. Hari? Etakota, right? When the shareholders are recognized as the owners, right? They do not. In other words, the PLC is not, controlled or governed by the shareholders, right? On the other hand, Puta, a PLC is an organization which has a legal personality. It means, right? PLC a PLC is recognized as a separate legal entity. That is what it says. The company is treated as, right? A company is treated as a separate person in law. A company is treated as a separate person in law. Now, what it can do? It can own assets, incur liabilities, sue and be sued in its own name. It means if the company wants, they can file a case against another party using the name of the company. And don't forget, what goes around comes around, right? On the other hand, Puta, even the company can be sued by a third party. Okay, the company can be sued, right? The next is, I told this before, shareholders are not owners of the company assets because assets are owned to the business. Am I clear with you? I repeat, assets are owned to the business. So shareholders are not owners of the company assets. Are we clear? Right. Ilageka, limited liability. Look at this one. Look at this. Shareholders' liability is limited to the amount unpaid on their shares. Okay. That means, but it's very simple. The liability of a shareholder is limited to what he has invested in the business. Okay. What he has invested in the business. Right. Then on the other hand, personal assets of the shareholders, right, are protected. So you don't want to sacrifice your personal assets. Am I clear with you? That is what you mean by the limited liability. It means the liability is limited to the investment made by the shareholder. Perpetual succession. Think about a sole proprietorship. If something happens to a sole proprietor, or if something happens to a partner in a partnership, most of the time that particular business, right, definitely that the business has to be closed off. Because that the nature of the partnerships and the sole proprietorships mean that there are no perpetual succession. Okay, there is no perpetual succession. So if this is not a characteristic in a PLC, because the PLC has a perpetual succession. That means, Puta, the company continues regardless of the death, insolvency, or transfer of shares. It doesn't matter. The ownership of the PLC can be changed, right? But it doesn't affect the existence of the PLC. I repeat, if you hear something new, if you hear something new, I'm always telling you, note it down close to that particular topic. Now, what does it mean, right? What does it mean? If something happens, if the ownership of a PLC changes, it has no impact on the existence of the PLC. PLC can be continued. Puta, poddak kalpana karan. In the share market, when the shares are sold, the shares are purchased by a new shareholder. So he becomes an owner of the business. So the ownership of the existing shareholder, that is going to be removed from him. But still the company continues. Why? The PLCs has a perpetual succession. Are we clear? Right. Mabila topic එක තමයි transferability of shares. Pute, shares can be freely transferred, especially if listed on the stock exchange. Right? I think you know the share market. The shares are traded. Shares are traded, right? So what happens there, Pute? What happens there? The shares can be freely transferred, and it is also a characteristic of a PLC. Puta, once again, listen to me. I am laying a very strong foundation to this competency. So I think everyone is listening, although we can't see each other. Okay. The next point, Puta, separation of ownership and management. Puta, shareholders is the party who select the directors. Let me tell you something. A shareholder can be elected as a director himself, right? If he owns a large number of shares, right? You can understand what would happen, right? At the time of the voting, he's going to get a huge amount of votes, right? The next is, Pata, directors manage the company on behalf of the shareholders. Okay, so shareholders have no direct involvement in the management. It is done by the appointed managers by the shareholders. Are we clear? Right. So these are the characteristics which I need to highlight regarding a PLC. Puta, listen to me very carefully. It is quite sure that you won't get, right, much questions. Let me tell you, none of the questions based on this part, but I need this. I need you to understand the nature of a PLC. Okay, good. Let's continue. Puta, the next is purpose of financial statements of a PLC. When I was explaining the objective of financial statements in LKAS 1 and in the conceptual framework, I pointed out something very important. When I was explaining the objectives, I told you in accounting, there are three main objectives. I mean, right? There is an objective of accounting. There is an objective of general purpose financial reporting. And there is an objective of financial statements. Here, I'm highlighting the objective of financial statements. Look at this. What is the topic today? Purpose of financial statements of a PLC. The financial statements of a PLC are prepared to provide information about financial position, financial performance, and cash flows, right? Assist users in making economic decisions. So the target or the objective of financial statements of a PLC is to provide what? Provide what? Information regarding the financial position, financial performance, and the cash flows, right, in making the economic decisions by the shareholders. Okay, but the next is main uses of financial information of a PLC. I have highlighted a few: shareholders, lenders and bankers, employees, potential investors, government and tax authorities, and analysts and the public. So these are the main uses of the information of a PLC. Okay, let's continue. Look at this. What is the framework? I think we have came across this, Pute. Okay, look at this. I'm asking here, financial reporting framework applicable to a PLC. But I think you know that we are discussing the PLCs under the Sri Lankan context. Sri Lankan context. Therefore, as we discussed about the PLCs in Sri Lankan context, PLCs must prepare financial statements in accordance with, highlight these two, SLFRSS and LKSS, along with the Companies Act requirement and listing rules in CSE. So there are four major things. Whatever the reporting should be done in accordance with SLFRSS, LKSS, Companies Act requirements, and the listing rules on CSE. Got it? Not only that, Puta, in answering it, we have, in preparing the reports, they have to use almost all the concepts. All the concepts. highlighting these one. Accrual basis. Okay. So most of the time, most of the financial statements, except the cash flows, are prepared based on accrual basis. And this is the underlying principle in reports of reporting the financial right information. Then I think you can remember this consistency. This is a very strong or very powerful concepts in the right in the syllabus. Why? I pointed this out many a times when I was explaining LKAS 8. What is LKAS 8? Accounting policies, changes in accounting estimates and errors. I told you, whatever the right policy that you select, that must be applied consistently. Okay. And the next is puta materiality puta. Puta minne mekat ona liya gan. The materiality means, I think most of us don't know the meaning of it, but they don't know the exact meaning of materiality. Puta, materiality means pute, if something matters for decision making of the stakeholders, that has to be right disclosed. I repeat, if an information matters for decision making of a stakeholder, that has to be disclosed. If they are immaterial, it is not required to disclose them separately. Listen to this. So, right, along with these four concepts, all the concepts are used in reporting financial statements of a PLC. Okay. Complete set of financial statements of a PLC. I think everybody knows this. These are called as components of financial statements. Okay, components. Let me explain the first one. Statement of financial position, right? Statement of financial position. That means what is the information expected to be disclosed here? Highlight assets, liabilities, and equity as at the reporting date. The reporting date means the last date of the financial year. Last date. Okay, last date, right? So you have to disclose all the available assets, liabilities, and equity as the reporting date in the statement of financial position. But let me tell you something, right? This time is in paper marking. I have noticed, right? But it is very sad to see. Students do not know where to disclose the assets, where to disclose the liabilities, where to disclose the incomes and expenses. It is very sad to see. I think, let me tell you something. I think, right, all the students in Sri Lanka, except a few, are going for tuition classes. Here also we are doing a tuition class, right? Pute, what I have felt, I was speaking about among the teachers. Puta, they have wasted their energy. They have wasted their time. They have wasted their money. Right, as they do not know where to disclose the incomes and expenses, what is the format that they have to use. So I think that none of the students in this class, right, is belong to that category. Okay, today is the first date we are discussing about the PLCs. Let me tell you something. Just follow my directions. I'm going to help you to score nearly 25 to 30 for this question. The balance is up to you. Okay, the balance is up to you. If you follow my directions, if you do the right homework which I'm asking you to do, right, you can obtain nearly 25 to 35 marks for this, right? Because the balance 10 is up to you, Pute. But I will provide you with the basics to, right, answer or to receive 40 out of 40 for PLCs. Okay, let's move to the next one. Now, where were we? I was explaining what we include or what we disclose in the statement of financial position. Remember, assets, liabilities, equity as the reporting date. Then, Puta, statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. Okay, other comprehensive income. Puta, listen to me. In here, it discloses revenue, expenses, profit, losses of the period, and highlight the next one, something very important, other comprehensive income. Does anyone know the meaning of other comprehensive income? If you want, you can note it down. Other comprehensive income means puta, unrealized income. It means that income can be recognized, but it is not realized. So I think you know, to record income in the statement of profit or loss, we are using the concept of realization. Now, what does it mean? The income has to be realized or realizable. Okay. I think I have explained it before. Pute, other comprehensive income means puta, this income can be recognized, but it has not been realized. Therefore, if you have such type of an income, that should not be recorded in the statement of profit or loss. That should be recorded in other comprehensive income, under the other comprehensive income. I repeat, what we record under the other comprehensive income? Unrealized income. Example එක කොන ලියා ගන්න. Surplus on revaluation. Surplus on revaluation is recorded in or under the category of other comprehensive income. Okay, good. The next is puta, statement of changes in equity. This time for this statement, 4 marks were allocated. 4 marks, right? Let's see what we have to include in here. Pute, in the statement of changes in equity, you have to include movement in share capital. It means you have to disclose the stated capital, retained earnings, and other reserves. Pute, according to the A-level syllabus, we get a maximum of 2 more reserves. First is puta revaluation reserve, and this is recognized as general reserve. Let me tell you something very important. Puta mekath kemathina note down karaganna. I'll speaking about this later also. Revaluation reserve is recognized as a capital reserve. Capital reserve. And both retained earnings and general reserve are recognized as revenue reserves. Revenue reserves. Okay, good. Give me a minute, puta. Right. The next is pute, cash flows. Cash flows. Let's see what we can include in the cash flow. Pute, cash flow in the statement of cash flows, what we disclose? Cash flows from operating activities, investing activities, and financing activities. So very simple. This is the only financial statement which is prepared on cash basis. Okay, cash basis, right? So the next is pute, notes to the financial statements. The notes are used to disclose a very limited number of information. First is, it is used to disclose any accounting policies you have used. It means if you have used FIFO method in valuing the inventory, that has to be disclosed. And if you have used any other policy, let's say a company has decided to recognize whatever the equipment that is purchased for the business use, right? I think you know, equipment is generally an item of non-current asset. But the company can come up with a policy. What is the policy? Let's say for an example, let's say the company has decided that they recognize whatever the equipment that they are purchased below the cost of 100,000 as an expense. Am I clear with you, Puta? Normally or generally, equipment is a non-current asset. But the company can develop their own policy to say, okay, if we record all the equipment in our statement of financial position, that the statement of financial position might be little bit complicated. So let's use this as a policy. All the equipment purchased at the cost of less than 100,000 are recognized as expenses. Am I clear with you? If you have selected that type of policy, that also should be disclosed. Then look at the next one. Detailed breakdowns. Something very important, Pute. Here, right, we prepare a very important and powerful note for property, plant, and equipment. What we disclose there? We disclose the additions, disposals, transfer of accumulated depreciation, surplus on surpluses on deficit on revaluation. Okay. The next is any explanatory items. If you want to explain something, once again, apply the concept of materiality. Why? When the company thinks this might be a sensitive point for decision making, let's disclose it, let's explain it. Okay, so they use it. Then they also include share capital and share issue details, the structure of the capital, how the capital is structured, and any share issues. There are 3 types of share issues. In fact, there are 4. Right? So this is what do you mean by what we mean by complete set of financial statements. Put the next one. Equity structure. Put once again, while the lecture is going on, if you have any questions, you can ask me. Okay, just drop a message to the chat. Right? Put equity structure of a PLC. Let me tell you something. Put here, the equity structure means nothing else. This is what we disclose here. Equity structure. I was planning to write on the screen. Give a minute. Let me check whether is it working. Alright. ඔන්න කැමති නම් පුතේ මෙන්න මෙහෙම මෙතන ටීතලයක් ඇඳගන්න this is where we disclose the equity structure of a PLC. Okay, the next is puta, next point is පුතේ දැන් හොඳට අහගන්න. Equity of a PLC is mainly consist of, right? Okay. Right. Pute, equity of a PLC is mainly consist of, highlight this one, share capital. Share capital. Puta, listen to me. Share capital of a PLC is comprised with ordinary shares and as well as preference shares. But let me tell you something. According to the A-level syllabus, we don't use this share. But that is for your knowledge, right? So share capital of a company is comprised with 2 types of shares mainly, ordinary shares and preference shares, but preference shares are not discussed in the A-level syllabus. Then this one, share premium. Puta poda mataka tiyaganna mekath pute katha wenni naha, but let me explain it. Share premium means pute, let's say par value means the value of a share. It is like the list price. Let's say the list price of a share is 10 rupees. The company is selling this for planning to sell this. There's issued a consideration to sell this at 15 rupees. 15 rupees. Now, do you understand? We have a premium of 5 rupees. So any reserve which is created using this type of equity is called as share premium. But listen to me, even this is not discussed in A-levels. I just want to explain this to you. Okay. Any other reserves? Puta, listen to me. Other reserves ko we might get general reserve. Okay. General reserve. Okay. General reserve ke lekak තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. And තව එකක් තියෙනවා පුතා profit or loss reserve කියලා තව එකක් තියෙනවා. Profit or loss reserve, right? Then මේ reserve එකත් අපිට test වෙන්නේ නැහැ A level වලදී. We have the general reserve sometimes. And the next is පුතා retained earnings. පුතා listen to me. මම දෙකුවා මෙන්න මේ දෙක මොන reserves ද පුතේ? I think you can remember that. I told you that they are called as, these reserves are called as revenue reserves. මම කියව පුතේ මේවා revenue reserves. හරිද? revenue reserves. ඔන්න ටික ලියා ගන්න. The next is පුතේ හරි. අපි යමු පල්ලෙහාට. right? Share capital of a PLC. දැන් උන ටික ටික අපි පාඩමේ ඇතුළට එනවා. So I need a small feedback. Do you understand the lesson so far? What I have taught you, what we have covered? අපි මොනවද කතා කරපු දේවල් පුතේ? Can I get a small feedback, children? I explained the meaning of a PLC, right? I explained the characteristics, right? I explained the purpose of financial statements, right? Then I explained the main uses. Then I told you what is the framework that we have to follow in developing financial reporting or financial statements of a PLC. I told you mainly to use the SLA, FRSL cases, right? And then accrual basis, right? All the concepts along with these four mainly. Then explain the content of financial statement. Then finally, I explained the equity structure of a PLC, right? Then mama kata karanna puta menne mewa eking එක. I'm going to explain all these things one after the other. So I need all your attention. Okay, children? Pute. Let me see whether the video is working. Still, it is not working. Come on, okay, children? Puta. Share capital of a PLC. First, listen to me. Puta make right? Share capital is recognized as, right? This is the main equity of the company. Equity. මේ තමයි company එකේ තියෙන right වැඩිපුරම බලවත් equity එක. But let me tell you something. How do we describe the share capital? Share capital represents the funds, okay, contributed by shareholders in exchange for ownership shares. What a very beautiful description, okay? It says, okay, what do you mean by share capital? Share capital represents the funds contributed by shareholders in exchange of ownership of shares. Highlight කරගන්න පුතා එක. Highlight කරගන්න. Right? Right. Then I told you that we have two types of shares, ordinary and ordinary shares and the preference shares. හරිද බලමු මොනවද කියලා ඒ වෙතකොට. හරි. පුතේ ordinary shares. පුතා highlight කරගන්න මේ ටික. Ordinary shares have or they carry the voting rights. If you have the ordinary shares, pute, you get the voting right at any incidents. I mean, most of the time in the AGM, you have the voting rights. And the next thing is, puta, ordinary shares are entitled to dividends. Pute, ta podi deyak. Mameka tona liya ganna. When it comes to a PLC, this dividend is not recognized as an expense. This is not an expense. Okay, then what is it? It is a distribution. මතක තියෙන වචන නේද? Right? This is a distribution to equity participant. Okay, so you have to understand dividends decreases equity, but it is not an expense. Dividends given by the company. Are we clear? Right. Then the next one, something very important. Pute, hondata haganda. Ordinary shareholders bear the highest risk. Let me tell you the reason. These are the people who will be set off ultimately or finally after settling all the debts of the company at a scene of bankruptcy. Okay? These are the people who are going to be settled, right? Finally, or at the end, right? The next is pute, residual claim on assets. Residual. That means in a situation of a bankruptcy, you can claim the assets, but that comes right at ultimate. You're going to be the ultimate user of the assets. Okay, good. The next is Puta, preference shares. Once again, this is not discussed in A levels, but let me explain. Puta, preference shares receives a fixed dividend. Okay. මේක උන ලියන්න පුතන් the ordinary shares මේ dividend එක vary වෙනවා. Dividend varies. Dividend varies for ordinary shares. But preference shares, it receives a fixed dividend. Then, listen to me very carefully, right? In most of the time, at the point of the settlements, preference shareholders gets the priority compared to the ordinary shareholders. That is why I told you that the ordinary shareholders bears the highest risk. Now you can understand it, right? Because as the equity holders, preference shareholders given the priority at the point of the settlements. And usually no voting rights. මම පොඩ්ඩක් කියලා දෙන්නම් පුතා. Preference shares කියන්නේ කොහොම එක දවසින් කරන්න පුළුවන් දෙයක් නෙමෙයි. හරිද? Right? It has number of preference shares. Some preference shares have the voting rights, but most of them it doesn't have the voting rights. But that is not up to for us to discuss. Right? So mainly remember, preference shares do not have the voting rights. Then, stage of share issue. Now, this is what I need to explain. Okay. A PLC. Now, listen to me. We are from here onwards, we are highlighting ordinary shares. And this is not discussed. Let's see how the ordinary shares can be issued by a PLC. Right? How the ordinary shares can be issued by a PLC. Okay? Right. Listen to me. Now, Pute, a PLC may issue a share in the following stages. Application, right? Again, a share value is collected along with the applications, and a portion of a share is collected at the allotment, and sometimes through calls. Puta, normally we have first call and second call. Puta, let me show you something. I'm going to share a whiteboard now. Right? My whiteboard ek puta share karna. Sorry. කාලෙකින් කරන ඉඳ මේක මට මතක නෑ වැඩි. කෝ white board එක. Can somebody tell me where is the whiteboard, Puta? Anyone in the class who? Oh, what is? Right? Can somebody help me to find the whiteboard here? Anyone in the class? Nobody knows. Okay, I know. Okay, come on, බලමු අපි. Hurry, come on, make him a leave. Come on, it's all right. More option. whiteboard. I didn't see that. Then breakout rooms, floodlights, disable limitations. No. There is no. We don't have. Translate breakout rooms, pools, spotlight share. Disable annotations for the side names of annotations. Right. Come on, Balam. Messages with the Balam. I will post the recording. Give me a minute. Send what about a can comment? I think my account about a can send. But the Banam at lazy very. Never matter make a pen and make a membelly. Oops. Okay, we'll see. Come on, right. I'm starting the recording again. Right, Puta. Now, where were we? I was explaining the share issue, right? Listen to me. Application, allotment, and calls. Puta, listen to me. When a company, let's say a company has, right, issued right articles of right association, they have issued a share at 10 rupees. Now, this is called as the consideration of a share. Okay, consideration. Now, let's say that they collect this consideration of a share in 4 different intervals. First one is application. Okay, application. Application. Second is allotment. Allotment. Third is pute call, right? Call 1. Call 1. The fourth is call 2. Call 2. Now let's say this is how they are going to collect this 10 rupees. With application, they are going to collect, let's say, 6 rupees out of this 10. Then with the allotment, they collect 2 rupees. Now what is the total? They have collected 8 rupees of the consideration. In call 1, again, they collect 1 rupee and call 2, 1 rupee. Now, these are the stages of share issue of a company. But do you know something? This method is not discussed in the A levels. Then what is discussed? What we discussed is, if the consideration of a share is 10 rupees, we collect the money, collect the amount at the same time. It means we have only one stage of share issue. That means along with the application, we collect the total consideration. Are we clear? We collect the total consideration. Right. Then let's move to the next one. Once again, if you have any doubts, you can ask me, okay? Messages right. Right. So let's move to the next one. Issue of shares. Issue of shares. A company can issue the shares. A company can issue the shares, right? In different prices at different considerations. But the first one is the company can issue the share at its par value. Par value means, if the consideration of a share is 10 rupees, you can issue the share at 10 rupees. That means you buy at the par value. Or sometimes you can issue a share at a premium. You can understand the meaning of premium. It means if the consideration of a share is 10 rupees, you can sell this at 13 rupees. So we have a premium of 3 rupees. Okay. And sometimes the shares can be issued at a discount, but this is rare and this method is kind of regulated, right? This has been regulated. As you can understand the meaning of a discount, if the consideration of a share is 10, if it is sold at or traded at 8 rupees, so it is sold at a discount. Are we clear? Great. Then let's move to the next one. Retained earnings of a PLC. Retained earnings. It's a very important point. I'm explaining all these things, right, in detail because you need it. You get, right, you have to use it, Pute. So before the next session on online, before we do it, you have to go through this particular recording. I'm going to send the recording again. Okay, Pute. Once again, if you have the tutorials right now, note this down at the same time. If you missed anything out, you can watch the recording later. But listen to me, right? This is something very useful to all of you. Pute. Let's move to the next equity, type of the equity, that is retained earnings. Retained earnings represents the highlight accumulated profit. Look at this. Less dividends paid and less transfers to reserves. Okay. Puta, later, probably in the following week, I'm going to show you the format of a changes in equity statement. Puta, let me show you. In that statement, Puta, we have a column to record the retained earnings. Right? Api kamme retained earnings column mein kiya. Okay, this is the retained earnings column. Puta, here, normally we record, right? The balance brought forward at the top. It means the opening balance of the retained earnings is recorded. And to this we add accumulated profit. Actually, what we add here is, Pute, we add profit for the period. Okay. We add profit for the period. I'm going to explain all these things. Profit for the period. That's what I told you. Retained earnings represents the accumulated profit on the Maya. And if the company has paid dividend, interim dividend. Interim dividend. If I paid interim dividend, that is deducted from the retained earnings. And if you have made a transfer, let's say you have transferred, right? You have transferred an amount from retained earnings to another reserve. General reserve. General reserve. So what you have to do here? You have to reduce it from the retained earnings and add that to the general reserve. See how powerful this particular definition is. Retained earnings represents the accumulated profit, less dividends paid, less transfers made to reserves. Okay. And look at this. What is the purpose of maintaining a reserve called retained earnings? What is the meaning of it? Puta, look at this. Retained earnings is used initially for business expansion, highlight. Then to dividend distribution and internal financing. These are the main uses of the reserve called the retained earnings. I think everyone is receiving a very important and unique knowledge in PLCs right now. Okay, children? Right, let's continue, children. I move to the next one, children. Reserves in a PLC. Okay, reserves. Look at this. When it says a reserve, right? Commonly there are a number of reserves that we maintain as change requisition according to the A-level syllabus. We maintain a reserve called retained earnings. And there is a abbreviations that RE means retained earnings. And there is another reserve, general reserve, right? It is general reserve. Then revaluation reserve, RR, revaluation reserve. And share premium make capital vibhagedi in right? This will not be used in the levels, but it is also a reserve. Remember that. I think everybody knows how the share premium reserve is created. Okay, good. Next point. Reserves are maintained by a PLC to achieve the following objective, right? Apart from the stated capital, why we include reserves, okay, in a PLC. මේ PLC equity එකක් ඇතුලේ ඇයි මේ reserves කියලා එකක් තියෙන්නේ? Let me explain all these things one after the other. Look at the point, Pudha. Look at the point. To strengthen the financial position to gain investor and lender confidence. How it happens? Listen to me very carefully. Pudha, I think you know, මේක චුට්ටක් හොඳට අහගන්න. This will be explained in the this will be explained in accounting ratios as well. Pudha, equity අප මේකට කියන පුතා මෙන්න මෙහෙම දෙයක්. When it comes to reserves, පුතේ, equity is comprised with two things. චුට්ටක් අහගන්න. මේ equity කියන එක, this is only for the concept of ratios. හරිද? මේක චුට්ටක් වරද්ද ගන්න එපා කවුරුත්. හරිද? According to the ratios, පුතා, equity is two types. We have owner's equity, and there's another equity that is called as the debt equity. Debt equity. මම කියන දේ කැමති නම් ලියා ගන්න. පුතේ, in the owner's equity of a PLC is comprised with හොඳට අහගන්න, stated capital and reserves. හරිද? Let me tell you something. The debt capital, මෙන්න මේක ඇතුළේ මම තව දෙයක් කියන්නද? මේ stated capital කියන එක ඇතුළේ මෙතන තියෙන්නේ අර ordinary shares විතරයි. හරිද? චුට්ටක් ඔයාලට ලියාගන්න. I told you that there are two types of shares තියෙනවානේ. We have the ordinary shares here. And in the debt capital, it includes the preference shares. Although we record the preference shares under the equity, for the concept of ratios, we recommend the preference shares under the debt equity. The reason is, listen to me, I told you previously that the preference shares receives a fixed dividend. It receives a fixed dividend. Therefore, preference shares are more likely a debt equity rather than the owner's equity. And not only this, Puta, a debt equity is also recognized by, it includes loans, long-term loans, long-term financing. Okay? Long-term loans are here. Puta, then look at the next one. How a reserve, right, strengthen the financial position. Puta, look at this. Reserves are in here. Reserves are in here. Puta, you can understand. Let's say, think about this. Assets of a company is 100. Assets. I think I'm using the basic accounting equation here. Okay. This is, let's say, the equity of a company. If this company is 70, what would be the liabilities? 30. Now, don't be afraid, right? Listen to me. This company has, right? This is company A. Let's say there's another company called B. It also has the same set of assets A, but equity is 20, liability is 80. According to your knowledge, if you are a potential investor, what is the company that you have to select? What is the company you have to select? Puta, you have to select company A. Why? Right? Very good. You have to select company A for sure. හරිද? අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම කම්පැනි තමයි හොයන්න ඕන. මොකද හේතුව? මොකද හේතුව? Right? Yes. The reason is පුතා, the company A has more financial strength. Why? The majority of assets are owned by the equity holders. Okay, equity holders. So this particular this company A is more stabilized than company B. Then what would happen? Stated capital, sorry, the reserves are under the owner's equity. When there are more owner's equity, look at the first one, it strengthen the financial position and gain investor and lender confidence. Second, right? Second point, to provide funds for future expansion. Something very important. If you have a reserve, if you have a reserve, පුතලගා reserve එකක් තියෙනවා නම් right? If you have a reserve, it helps to provide, right, to future expansion. පුතට හම්බ වෙනවා පුතා future expansion එකක්. හරිද? Give me a minute. Right? Without depending heavily on external borrowings. Now, this is an extension to the first one. If you have your own funds, you don't want to move to the, what do you mean by here? Loans or loans because you have enough funds in your business. That is another importance of maintaining a reserve. Third, to act as a buffer against unexpected losses. Once again, if you have a reserve, අර පුතාලා අහලා තිනේ අර කූඹියෝන්ගේ කතන්දරේ නේද? Right? Right, when during the when there is no rain, they collect the food and they keep maintain a store. They have a reserve, so they can use it when during the rainy days. Okay, so listen to me. This particular reserves is act as a buffer against what? Unexpected losses such as economic downturn, sudden expenses, and business risks. So you have kind of a reserve to face them. Okay, children? Next. Puta, when there is a reserve, it helps you to pay consistent dividends. Now, how this helpful? This is helpful. When you pay consistent dividends, you have to understand that attracts more potential shareholders. You can increase your funds. The next is Puta, to comply with this should be legal, LE, legal and regulatory requirements. Sometimes by the law it has been stated that you have to maintain a reserve. You have to maintain a reserve. Okay. The next is Pute, to issue bonus shares. Bonus share is also called as this capitalization. Capitalization. The next is to protect the company capital, safeguard creditors and long-term stakeholders. But let me tell you something. I don't know whether they will be tested directly in the A-level paper, but if you know these things, you can use these to develop some of the answers in the question. Okay? Because this is A-levels, this is not O-levels. There is, right, something that you have to read and understand. Something very important. Some reserves okay, some reserves can be distributed as dividends by a PLC and some cannot. Let's see what are the reserves that can be distributed as, right, dividends. We can distribute the followings: retained earnings and general reserve. Why they can be distributed? I told you that these reserves are recognized as which reserves? Revenue reserves. So what is the conclusion? Revenue reserves can be distributed as dividends. Then let's see, right, what type of a reserve or the types of reserves that cannot be distributed as dividends. Puta, I told you according to the A levels, Pute, we have right, we have to recognize only one more reserve, that is revaluation reserve. Puta, hondata haganna. Revaluation reserve cannot be distributed in the form of dividends. Not only that, there's another one, that is share premium. Even this cannot be distributed in the form of the dividends. Okay, good. So I think everyone is understanding. Puta, let's move to the next one. Dividends in a PLC. Dividends in a PLC. මෙන්න මේක ඊළඟ point එක. හරිද? හොඳට අහගන්න. පුතේ, dividends are paid, right? Dividends කියලා කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? අහගන්න පොඩ්ඩක්. Dividends are the portion of profit. highlight කරගන්න. Portion of the profit distributed by a company to its shareholders as a return on their investment. Once again, this dividend is not an expense. Okay, මෙයා කිසිම වෙලාවක expense එකක් නම් වෙන්නේ නැහැ පුතේ. හොඳට අහගන්න. Anyway, this is a distribution to equity participants. It is true that the dividends decreases the equity, but it is not an expense, it is a distribution. Okay, so I think you can understand what would happen in a business if the owner, I mean in a sole proprietorship, if the owner withdraw the things, what would happen? හරිද? අපි හැමෝම දන්න මොකක්ද වෙන්නේ කියන එක. හරි? හරි. අපි අපුතා. There are two types of dividends paid by a PLC. පළවෙනි එක interim dividend. මේ වචන වලට දැම්මම හුරු වෙලා තියාගන්න. What do you mean by interim dividend? පුතා, dividends declared during the accounting year. ඒ කියන්නේ මේක ව්‍යාපාරය ඇතුළතදී. ඒ කියන්නේ during the year means, for an example, let's say during 1st April 2024 to 31st of March 2025, these shares, I mean these dividends are declared. Then the next is they have been paid. They have been declared, they have been paid. And how it is paid? Based on the estimated profit. Declared, paid based on the estimated profit. That is how you recognize an interim dividend. පුතා, මම මේකත් ඕන ලියා ගන්න. Interim dividends are usually deducted from the retained earnings. Making අඩු වෙනවා. Because it is paid, it is deducted from the cash and also deducted from the retained earnings. Okay. Next is පුතා, final dividend. There's a question. Let's see. Right. කවුද මේ Nescafe කස්සා? එක එක නම් වලින් එනවනේ ළමයි. හරි. අපි බලමු. කවුරුවත් කවන්නේ. Final dividend. පුතේ, final dividend හොඳට අහගන්න. Final dividend is not declared during the accounting year. It is declared at the AGM. But now what is it meant by AGM? Annual general meeting. And the next is something very important. It is paid after the final dividend. මම පොඩි දෙයක් කියන්නද? Initially, these final dividends are proposed. වචනට හුරු වෙන්න. Proposed. Proposed by the directors. Right? And they are declared or seconded at the AGM. Am I clear with you? They will be approved at the AGM by the shareholders. And so you can understand AGM, I think you can මතකද පුතා LKS 10 එක මතකයි කියලා මං හිතනවා. LKS 10 මතකයි නේද? දෙක පොඩ කැප්ලයි කරගන්න මෙතනට. Right? the board of directors are approving the financial statements at a later date, no? So if the final dividend will be seconded at the AGM, you can understand that should be that has to be approved after the AGM. Therefore, there is no way of settling a final dividend during the period like interim dividends. Okay, so that's what I told here. Paid after final accounts are prepared. But interim dividends paid before the final accounts. It can be paid during the period. But this dividend is never paid during this period. Look at them. Shown as an appropriation of profit. Okay. Make a seconded win passene. This is an appropriation. Make him put they at the time of AGM, they know the profit. So it is going to be recognized as an appropriation or distribution of profit. Are we clear? Most importantly, final dividend is not paid during the period. Interim dividends is paid during the period. Okay. So I think everyone understand, everyone is listening. We are in the middle of a very important, right, session, as I guess. Right. Next point. Let's move to the next one. I'm going to explain the key dividends, right, of features of dividends. Dividends are paid. Now, what is a dividend? Mother dividends make a matakada. Can read the classification, sorry, the definition of dividends. Dividends are the portion of profits distributed by the company to shareholders as a return on their investment. Now I'm going to explain the key features of a dividend. Paid only out of profits. Dividends are paid only using the revenue reserves. Now, what does it mean? All the profits are available or transferred to which reserve? Revenue reserves. Then, the dividends are declared by the board of directors, both proposed or final dividend and interim dividends. Then, it is approved by the shareholders. But listen to me, this approval is receivable only for the final dividend, not for the interim. Because interim dividend is paid during the period. It is decided and declared by the board of directors, and it is also approved by the directors. But final dividend is not like that. It is declared by the board of directors, approved by the shareholders. Okay, then dividends paid in proportion to the number of shares held. In proportion to the number of shares held. Dividend is not an expense, it is an appropriation of profit. Expenses definition decrease in assets or increase in liabilities, resulting in decrease in equity other than the distributions. This is, although distribution decreases the equity, it is not an expense. Remember, distributions are drawings, in a sole proprietorship or a partnership, drawings. Here in a PLC, interim dividend or dividends. It is also not interim dividend, just dividends. It is a distribution of profit. Are you all with me? Great. It was right. Types of shares issued. Types of shares to be issued. There are number of shares, right? Share issues, in fact. Not the shares, share issues. First thing is there is a share issue called as initial public offering. That means we IPO, initial public offering. okay, then මේක පුතා මෙන්න මේ දෙක එක වගේ වුණාට පොඩි වෙනසක් තියෙනවා හොඳද? ඔය දන්නවද මම මේක දැම්මේ මේ හේතුවට ඇතුව. In this year A levels, in the state changes in equity statement, we have an initial public offering. Okay? Initial public offering එකක් තියෙනවා. Right? ඒ කියන්නේ මේ අවුරුද්දේ තමයි company එක පටන් ගන්නෙ. So whatever the share issue, if you trade the share for the first time, that is called as an initial public offering. Now this is by using this මම ඉස්සරහ කතා කරනවා. By using initial public offering, we can start or commence a PLC. To commence a PLC, initial public offering should be there. But public issue is available for the existing companies. හරිද? මේක initial එකක් නෙමෙයි. Let's say a company has been incorporated to raise more funds. They have issued or they have approved a public issue, right? So initial public offering and public issue are two different things. Then put up the next is a right issue. The last is capitalization of reserves, or it is also called as the bonus issue. So these are the 4 types of share issues of a company. Give me a minute. Right. Let's see the meaning of initial public offering. Please go through this very, very carefully. It is a complete tutorial. Let's see the meaning of initial public offering. Initial public offering. Initial public offering is the first time a company offers its shares to the general public and gets listed on a stock exchange. This is what I was explaining. It is the first time of a company share issue. Right? It is the first time that the company shares are issued to the general public, right? General public, and gets listed on a stock exchange. After the initial public offering only, right? The first sale of the shares to the general public, and it is the only method of get listed on a stock exchange. Then something very important. Before an IPO, a company is a privately owned. Right? Puta, I think there are 2 types, or you know this, there are 2 types of PLCs but there are 2 types of companies, right? 2 types of companies based on the ownership. Private limited, private limited and public limited. Okay. If you issue shares to the general public, that is definitely done as what? A PLC. PLC. So, if you decide to sell the shares to the general public, that becomes a PLC. It has to be private limited. If you started a PLC at the time onward, that becomes a PLC once again, right? At the same time. But if you are converting your private limited company to the public limited company by selling the shares to the general public in the open market, that becomes a PLC. Okay. Then the next one, through initial public offering, it highlight karaganna, issues the shares to the public. Initial public offering it shares the issues to the public, okay, public, and becomes a public limited company. It becomes a PLC. Nothing else but through an initial public offering. And through initial public offering, it gets listed on the stock exchange. In Sri Lankan context, SCSC, that means Colombo Stock Exchange. Okay, so these are the 3 things that happens once you issue an initial public offering. Got it? Once again, Putala, if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Right, perfect. Let's continue. Pute, let's move to the next page, page 4. ඔන්න මම පොඩ්ඩක් මේක අරගෙන මම පොඩ්ඩක් මේ ඇත්තටම පොත් වගේක් කියවනවා. ඇත්තටම මම කිව්වේ සිංහල පොත් වගේක්. රයිට් මෙතන තියෙන පුතා එක පොතක් මේ මූල්‍ය වාර්තාකරණයේ මූලික සිද්ධාන්ත කියලා චන්දන ගුණතිලක කියලා සර් කෙනෙක් ලියපු එකක්. I went through that and I prepared this as a table. Okay. So I went through number of books to prepare this tutorial, and let me tell you there are no right proper English medium sources. So I had to read a lot of single medium sources and prepare this tutorial. Okay. පුතේ අහගන්න. Differences between initial public offering and a public issue. Initial public offering මම එක වෙනස් කරන්න හේතුවත් පොඩ්ඩක් අහගන්න. මොකද මේ දෙක වෙනම නමක් විදිහට දෙන්නේ නැහැ. පොඩ්ඩක් ඉගෙන ගන්න එක හොඳයි. හරිද? මේක ගැන පොඩ්ඩක් මම කිලිම කියනවා. This is not explained in detail in the A-level syllabus, but they are slightly tested in the PLC question. මොකද මම එහෙම දන්නවද කියන්නේ පුතේ? Because in 2025 A-levels, we are not discussing a public issue. මොකද දන්නවද මම එහෙම කියන්නේ? It clearly says that the PLC started its activities in the current accounting period. So the share issue definitely should be what? An initial public offering. මම ආයි පාරක් කියන්න පොඩ්ඩක් අහගන්න. If the company right is sells its shares for the first time, that is initial public offering. Okay, that is initial public offering. But if a company sells its shares, right? If a company sells its shares, I mean, which is already incorporated, that is called as a public issue. Public issue. But listen to me, right? Both these shares are issued to the general public. The difference is on another area, right? Let's see the meaning. Initial public offering. First time shares are offered to the public. It is the first time where the shares are offered to the public. Public issue is any issue of shares to the public. It is not the first time. Harida, any issues. Then company status. Initial public offering. Company becomes a PLC through an IPO. That's the point. Company becomes a PLC through the initial public offering. But public issue, company is already a PLC. Number of times. Initial public offering at the commencement of the PLC. But public issues can occur many times. Whenever the company needs funds, they can issue a public issue. Purpose? To enter the capital market and gets listed. The purpose of the IPO is get into the capital market and get listed. And public issue, the objective or the purpose, to raise additional capital. Stock exchange listing, right? Listing happens for the first time. When there is an IPO, that is the point where you get the company listed in the stock exchange. But public issue means nothing else. The company is already listed. Prospectus. Issued for the first time for public issue. Prospectus. I think those who know, they're doing business studies, if you're discussing about PLCs, you are coming across this particular term. This is the document we have to use to invite the general public to invest in our shares. So whenever there is an initial public offering, a prospectus must be issued. Then the next is issued for each public issue. මේ prospectus එක හැම වෙලේම issue කරගන්න වෙනවා. පැහැදිලි? ඊට පස්සේ example, private company issuing shares for the first time, listed PLC issuing more shares. Examples. How is it පුතා? හැමෝටම තේරුණාද කතාව? හැමෝටම කතාව can I get a small feedback children? පොඩි feedback එකක් දෙන්න මට. Do you understand the lesson so far? පුතාලා මම මේ බොහොම මේකින් කියනවා මචං පුතේ මෙතන ඉන්නවා ළමයි වගේක් තමන්ගේ නමින් පොඩ්ඩක් එන්න නැත්නම් මම ඒගොල්ලෝම පොඩ්ඩක් අයින් කරන්න වෙනවා මෙතන නාලන්දෙච් විත් ඇවිල්ලානේ. කරුණා කරලා ඔයගොල්ලෝගේ නම්බරින් ඉන්න නැත්නම් මම විනාඩියක් දෙන්නම් ඔයගොල්ලෝ නම්බරින් මේක නැත්නම් ලස්සනට කරන් යන්න එපා නේද? මෙතන ඉන්න හැමෝම මම දන්නා ඉන්නේ. right. අපි ඒව ටික තියමු වෙන ඔන්ලයින් ක්ලාසස් වල කරගන්න මේකේ බෑ. හරි මේකේ බෑ ඒව වෙන ක්ලාසස් වල කරගන්න පුළුවන් ඔය අනන්ත මනන් දේවල්. මගේ ක්ලාස් එකේ මම ඔන්ලයින් කරන දවස් වලට ඒව බෑ. හරි මම ලස්සනට පාඩම කරගෙන යනවා මේක ඩිස්ටර්බ් වෙන්න දෙන්න බෑ. හරි කරුණා කරලා. So please avoid those activities here in this class. Okay? Thanks. Right. Right පුතේ. අපි පාඩමට ආපහු. Right. හරි. හැබැයි දැන් මට හිතෙනවා අදට මේ ටික ඇති කියලාත්. මට හිතෙනවා අදට මේ ටික ඇති කියලාත් මට හිතෙනවා. නේද? right අපි ද කරානේ ගොඩක් ටිකක් මේ ටික අපි next week අපි කතා කරගමු. next week අපි කතා කරමු. තව ගොඩාක් දේවල් තියෙනවා පුතේ උගන්නන්න. online හින්දා ගොඩාක්ම effective නෑ ගොඩාක් වෙලා කරනවා නම්. So anyway, before we wind off. Right. So before we wind off, do you understand what I have taught you today? Let me summarize what we discussed in the class. Right. අපි ගොඩාක් දේවල් කතා කරා පන්තියද? First I defined what is a PLC. PLC කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා මම කිව්වා. Then I highlighted, we recognized some of the characteristics. I gave description and much details. I think you have noted them down. Then I explained the purpose of financial statements of a PLC. What is the purpose? So that is go in line with the objective of financial statements. Financial statements of PLC is prepared to provide information about financial position, financial performance, and the cash flows. Right. Then the next is main users of financial information. These are the main users. Then puta financial reporting framework applicable to PLCs. I told you, right? When a kisi deyak neme pute, if you prepare the financial statement, that should be in accordance with SLFRS LKSs. If you are preparing the reports in the Sri Lankan context, not only that, the Companies Act and listing rules in CSC. Then the next is puta accrual basis, going concern, consistency, and materiality. Right, they have to be used as the key assumptions in preparing the financial statements, along with the other remaining concepts. Then I pointed out what it includes in a complete set of financial statements. Right, then I discussed about the equity structure. This equity structure is found. This is found in, right, the statement of changes in equity. The equity structure is found where in the change in equity statement. The equity statement is prepared in columnar basis, right? I think Mama පුතාලට ඉගෙනුවේ අර sole proprietorship final accounts මතකද format එක? I told you I used something like this, right? I recorded capital here and a column to record retained earnings. So මේකක් මට මතක් කරා. අද මෙතන තියෙන්නේ පුතා this is in the change in equity statements of a PLC, we have the stated capital over here, retained earnings, revaluation reserve, general reserve, and so on. So equity structure I explained. I told equity of a PLCs mainly consist of share capital, share premium, other reserves, and retained earnings. I told you here the share premium is not discussed or used in A levels, and also the preference shares are also not used. But know that structure. What in the money? Other reserves, general reserve, profit or loss reserve, and retained earnings. Then I explained share capital. What do you mean by ordinary shares? What are the differences between those two? And how a share is issued by a PLC? Application, allotment, calls. But I told you in the A-level syllabus, we don't use this, right? We don't use this. මේක පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ නැහැ මේ type එක. We don't use මේක ඔක්කොම යන්නේ පුතා. What is the consideration? What we have to remember? The consideration of a share is collected at once. එකපාරම collect කරගන්නවා with applications. Then the last is issue of shares. The shares can be issued at the par value, at a premium, or at a discount. Okay, children? Right. එහෙමනම් අදට මම මෙතනින් theory පන්තිය නවත්තනවා. හරිද? මම හිතනවා අදට ඇති කියලා. We have more than enough time, but I'll attend to the class as soon as possible. Puta, the paper marking will be completed on 17th. I'm starting the classes from 18th. බලමු 18 වෙනි කවද්ද දන්නේ නැහැ. මම 18 වෙනි ඉඳලා පන්ති පටන් ගන්නවා because paper marking is something that should be done by every teacher. I don't know. That is the only thing that I'm going to explain. මේක පුතා teacher කෙනෙක් කරන්න ඕන වැඩක්. That gives you much experience, how the papers are marked, right? What we have to give the or what are the information that you have to transfer to the students? What are the incorrect practices? මම තා චූටි දෙයක් කියන්න පොඩ්ඩක් අහගන්න. ඔයගොල්ලන්ට මතක නම් when I was explaining, right, මම පුතාලට කිව්වා whenever you write, whenever you prepare a financial statement, you try the title of it. This time they added something. මෙතන අලුත් දෙයක් එකතු වෙනවා. මොකක්ද දන්නවද? You can't write the statement of profit or loss like this hereafter. P and L කියලා ලියන්න බෑ. You have to write it this way. Profit or loss statement. ඔහොම ලියන්න වෙනවා. මේවට අපි ලකුණු දුන්නේ නැහැ. It was allocated 1 mark, but this was not allocated if you have written it like this way. You write profit or loss and other ඔන්නෝක ලියන්න ඕන පුතා. And if you have written SOFP, මම මේ ඇත්ත දෙයක් කතා කරන්නේ. The mark is not given to this one. You have to write it as statement of financial. Do you know the reason? Because this is a requirement of LKAS1. හරිද? මේක අපිට මෙහෙම ලියන්න කියලා කියනවා. LKAS1 වල අපිට ලියන්න කියලා කියනවා. Then write it like that way. But I have a lot of things to share. A lot of things. Right, to share once I get back. So, Puta, we have started. We have only one more competencies left, accounting ratios. But before that, I want you to understand, I want you to practice the PLCs and the cash flow statement to score the highest marks possible. Okay, then that's all for today, the theory class. Recording you can go through it. I'll share it to the group once it is completed. And go through this again and again and get a proper knowledge on PLCs. Okay, then that's all for today in the theory class. And stay in the group, stay in the meeting. We are starting the paper class in 5 minutes.